Hello and welcome to Pop Culture Power Playground. My name is Tom.
And my name is John.
We're here today and we're going to be talking about a variety of subjects. First of all, we're going to be talking about the recent TV cancellations and some shockers among the bunch here. And one of the shows I was a huge fan of was Ash vs. Evil Dead, which I could see creatively how they might be kind of running out of things, but I imagine the popularity has sustained itself. But as one of the signature shows for Starz, I would have kind of expected them to hang on for this for a little bit. And of course, Bruce Campbell announced himself when the network canceled the show that he's officially retiring as Ash. So any hopes of it being picked up by another network was pretty much dashed with his retirement. Do you think it's finalized, or do you think it's just something? I mean, is he true to his word, or do you think if it was lucrative enough to pick up the role again on a more, well-known network, that it would be, that might be popping up again?
Well, am I right in thinking that he had some kind of cameo in that Evil Dead reboot movie that they did a little while ago?
Yeah, he was in the end credits scene. It was just more or less a silhouette and enough distinctive facial features.
Yeah, see, that's why I feel like this is probably a pretty finalized thing, because for me, that move kind of seemed like the move where he's like, all right, let's kind of see like what lucrative kind of like side there is to potentially bringing back the character. And that movie was not necessarily a big hit. Definitely not as big a hit as Ash. That's fun to say. So close together. But yeah, I mean, I think that probably, getting 3 seasons, I don't know exactly what they were expecting when they were going to series, but I feel like this is probably enough of an extended run for Ash that Bruce Campbell is probably true to his word at this point, and is like, yeah, I think I'm ready to hang it up.
Yeah, funny thing, shortly after the cancellation of the show, Fede Alvarez, the director of the reboot, or I guess the soft reboot since they technically coexist in the same universe, did a poll about what his next project was going to be, and Evil Dead 2 came up, and it won by an overwhelming poll on Twitter. That he posted up there. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, whether or not, because we were always wanting an Ash and Mia type crossover, now that Bruce has officially retired as Ash, I don't think obviously that's not going to happen, but I like to think if was it Jane Levy, the one who plays Mia, may be able to pick it up, and who knows, there was enough Evil Dead fans who I think it was well received by them, because it's kind of fickle with new and old fans trying to reboot things.
Yeah.
And, I just think that it was warmed enough that they could make a sequel if they wanted to. Anyway, moving on here. There was other shows like Lucifer, got canceled, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Now, fortunately enough, NBC picked that up. Somehow, I think, and Fox somehow opted to pick up Last Man Standing, the popular ABC show that got canceled. Tim Allen, which where their priorities lie.
Yeah.
So, any big shockers there that you thought was canceled?
I was overall pretty surprised that a lot of the shows that they canceled this year were shows that have actually been on for a couple of seasons and appeared to have some solid success. I feel like a lot of the shows that get canceled over the past couple of years are shows that are more like one season, where it's like, oh, we tried something, it didn't really work, so we're just kind of axing it. Examples that come to mind, particularly for Fox, are shows like Son of Zorn or Making History, shows like that, where they tried it for one season, they're like, we don't want to commit. It was definitely shocking for me that they cut out so many of their shows that have been staples for a while. Because as you mentioned, it's like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which had 5 seasons, Last Man on Earth, different from Last Man Standing, which had 4 seasons, Lucifer, which I think had, I want to say 3, maybe 4 seasons. But even Gotham was only picked up for one additional season, so it does seem like they're kind of trying to wipe their slate clean in a way. And to me, that's the big shock just in general, that they do kind of seem to be going for a reboot of their just television, what they're offering. Aside from obviously some of the shows like The Simpsons or like Bob's Burgers, like they're keeping their animated families on, but every other kind of show has to watch out.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. You were talking about Gotham, yes. I believe, according to the showrunners, they had designed it for just to last for one more season because, obviously there's a lot of creative liberties that they had to do before Batman became Batman, and Gotham has pretty much been turned upside down numerous times, and it just seems like the way the criminals have been set up has just been way too chaotic and overpowered, but obviously by design. But I think hopefully, unlike Smallville, we can actually see Bruce at least do some Batmaning when the show goes out, because that was kind of a real disappointment just to only see Smallville's conclusion be, oh wait, CGI Tom Welling in a suit in like a faraway shot. So that was kind of a cop-out there. So as far as any other shows I thought could have had potential of getting additional seasons, I think the Mick with Caitlin Olsen, that could have been expanded further, because obviously she's of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and a lot of the people behind that show, they're spurting off new shows or just new content in general. Among them, I think Charlie Day is doing one. I think it's one of the shows involving an old folks' home, and I just thought it was kind of funny, just on concept. Obviously it's not going to be this generation's Golden Girls or anything, but it's kind of something that's you don't really see very often, which is the elderly-centered sitcom. And there's also Rob McElhaney. I believe he just signed up a deal with people from Rooster Teeth to do a web show. So that'll be kind of interesting. Yeah,
and plus, of course, Glenn Howerton and Patton Oswalt are now the stars of AP Bio, which actually got renewed for a second season over on NBC.
Yeah, is AP Bio, is that a regular network show, or is that online exclusive? I thought it might have been.
No, it's a network regular.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they all haven't moved on from Sunny yet, and they're still kind of doing it. So, hey, good for them. They've encountered a lot of success. Things that should have been canceled. What do you think? Was there any shows you thought kind of well worn out its welcome, aside from Fox animated shows? Because for some reason they still come up with stuff for The Simpsons.
Yeah, I'm willing to give Bob's Burgers at least a couple more years of my life before I'm ready to see that shuffle off the network. Definitely The Simpsons. I think it's one of those shows where I'm not even bothered that it's on anymore, if I'll be totally honest. I'm just like, all right, yeah, you guys just kind of keep doing what you're doing. I'm just not going to really access it with it. As far as shows that should have been canceled, I don't know, man. That's a tough one. I know I'm going to incite some riots with this one, but as someone who has fallen off as far as interest with The Walking Dead, I'm kind of counting down the days until that ultimately ends as well, because I feel like that's a show that is kind of not really as good as it was when it first started out.
Yeah, honestly, from season 3 on, it almost became more or less predictable, because when they were wanting to follow more of the comic storyline, which one of the appeals from the TV show is that it was willing to deviate, and hell, one of the remaining original survivors, isn't even in the comic book, and Daryl Dixon. So now that they're trying to parallel the comics a little bit more, and obviously one of the major pillars for the show Lauren Cohen, which, depending on how her ABC show Whiskey Caliber does, she's going to be in a reduced capacity. She's going to make an appearance in next season, but we don't know what the extent because, again, we don't know the success of the show that she's going to be on. I think it's about due and everything, and I actually used to watch it very religiously, but just these past couple seasons, I don't know, I'm just really lost interest, and I try to play catch up, a binge, but it's just not doing. Is there any shockers of shows you think that was a pleasant surprise?
For me, definitely the big one, the one that everyone, of course, is talking about is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I had anticipated that, Brooklyn Nine-Nine would get a send-off similar to the send-off Fox just gave New Girl, where I thought, they'd be talking with the team and be like, all right, yeah, we are going to give you guys your final season, especially because that show, it definitely has a large following. It's got a lot of big names attached to it. The fact that they really canceled it and the fact that there wasn't a whole lot of, I feel like, rumors about it getting canceled or being on the bubble when that news came out, that was really what shocked me the most, was just the fact that what seemed like a very solid sitcom would get the axe so suddenly. So I'm also very glad that it is getting its final season over on NBC.
Okay. So now we're ready to talk about three most major films coming out for this year, and I'm kind of surprised given the release launch window. It's just so brief. It just seems like, personally, I think Deadpool, there's 3 movies, of course. There's Avengers Infinity War, there's Deadpool, and then there's Solo, which is coming out Memorial Day weekend, which is the following one. Here we go. Avengers, they've had some time, obviously, to envelop the box office and just steamrolling everything, and I think they're still a top 10, obviously, and Deadpool coming in. I think it just recently fell short of its the original film in the box office for the record R-rated openings. So, which some people felt like it's superior to the original. I happen to that. And then, of course, there's Solo. So, of the 3 films, what do you think is going to lose out the most on, or do you think they'll all sustain their audience?
Interesting. I feel like, I think each of them definitely has a different enough kind of audience draw that I think they'll all definitely make their money back. I don't think any of these movies will definitely sustain anything like a loss. But I do think of the 3, probably the one that I think will finish third is Deadpool 2. Obviously, it's got a weak lead on Solo, so, they have time to kind of build it up. But I feel like when it comes to these kind of franchise fights, it's hard to combat, the ultimate kind of bridging together of every single thing in the MCU in a movie that doesn't feel like just trying to get you to watch other movies. I think that movie is still going to steamroll a lot of the competition. I think Solo is going to give it its best fight, just because, again, Star Wars is really up there as far as big franchises with passionate fan bases. And it is just really interesting, to kind of revisit this classic character, bring on some incredible talents to the cast. I think that definitely Avengers and Solo will probably be the 2 biggest earners of these 3.
Yeah, obviously with the R rating, it kind of constricts intake, but for creative reasons, there's no way you can ever compromise with Deadpool. He's an R-rated character, and anything else, it's just, it's not going to make as much as it would be. Obviously. As far as Solo, I have an interesting question with, obviously the Star Wars films have been all the long way, but I think, I don't know Last Jedi versus Rogue One, who made more per se, but it was kind of a weird mix because, generally speaking, when it came to mixed bag for Star Wars. Among the fans, there's a huge divide over The Last Jedi versus when critics are more praising it, as opposed to when it was, say, the prequels. It was more of a mixed bag for critics, whereas it was slightly more beloved by fans. So, that being said, do you feel that Solo might suffer some of the backlash, or do you think it was just going to proceed along in Steam thing? Has Last Jedi and Rogue One, and I guess Force Awakens, do you think any of that will affect its incoming take or reception?
I think it will probably have some effect, but I feel like it's probably going to be pretty, minute or not too big of a splash. I think that, even with the backlash and the reasons behind it, I think that there are just so many people that still just care about Star Wars and want to see these movies. I think that, obviously there is some divide amongst the critics and the fans, but I feel like a lot of people, overall, I wouldn't say any of the new Star Wars movies that have come out are bad. And I think a lot of the people that are saying that they are bad have some just very bad reasons for saying that. So I think that, for me, definitely of the three movies, I've seen Avengers Infinity War, and I'm really interested in seeing Solo, just because, I think it's fun to revisit this character, especially, considering the fact that he's such a big part of so many of the Star Wars films. Obviously, he was a huge central character in The Force Awakens. I'm just really excited for Solo. I also think that the fact that, again, they have a lot of folks who are big name draws. Obviously, you have, Game of Thrones is Emilia Clarke. You have Donald Glover. I forget her name. It's Phoebe something, but the star of Fleabag and the person behind the current BBC show Killing Eve, also amazing. And, of course, Woody Harrelson. I think that this movie has enough draws and enough things going for it that a good number of people are still going to want to see Solo and keep Star Wars going.
I think it was Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yes, that's what it is. Thank you. Wonderful.
The droid L337.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so obviously it's a loaded cast and everything, and there have been reports, of course, with how it got off to a bumpy ride from the changing of hands, and I heard the early reception for the film is that it's more overwhelmingly positive. So obviously the transitioning from Phil Lord and Chris Miller over to Ron Howard clearly didn't seem to affect the film, at least until we see the final product.
Yeah, I'm definitely bummed that it's no longer a Phil Lord and Chris Miller project, but even so, there's still so much going on for it that's good that I'm definitely on board.
I think Solo is going to get the crossover crowd from the Avengers, and I think they'll get the benefit as well as its own built-in Star Wars fan base and everything. So I think it'll naturally transition. It'll be interesting to see how Deadpool will survive along this. I agree with you. It will make its money back, but one of the reasons why the first one made so much money or just staying power is because of the lack of competition, but now we have the sequel and even more build up now to something else, which is kind of a shame considering that the Fox Cinematic Universe, I heard, is effectively ending at X-Men Dark Phoenix before the Fox deal with Disney finalizes. Do you think they can get another sequel in before that happens, or?
I don't know, man. The quality and the interest in the X-Men films, I feel like, has kind of fluctuated over the years. You've got some high points like X-Men First Class and Logan. And then you've got some low points like X-Men Origins, Wolverine. and what were they called? It was Days of Future Past, and was it just called Apocalypse? Was it X-Men Apocalypse?
Yeah, X-Men Apocalypse. So it seems like one good and one bad it's like a Star Trek. It's like the Star Trek pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think that probably if they can, they're gonna try and squeeze out another movie. But I mean, I'm not holding my breath for it.
Well, we're going to be talking about franchises we think should be presented in another medium. Since we're all banking on nostalgia, or there's plenty of examples out there. So if you think about when you look at a TV guide, remember when they were a thing, and you look at something that's like 20, 30 years old as far as the programming guide, you look at today's programming guide, we would almost not see a difference in certain respects, because we have certain shows like Roseanne, that's back. We have MacGyver. One of the fall shows that's premiering is Magnum P.I. Of course, and then you have the crossover stuff, which was successful film franchises making its way over to TV, like Lupin, which is I heard it was pretty good, but I guess it ran into one of those situations where the star of the show kind of got himself fired. So and they replaced Clayne Crawford, right?
Yeah, Clayne Crawford got fired from Lethal Weapon, but I believe that the news came out that if and when it gets renewed, it'll be, I think, Sean William Scott that'll replace.
I'm wondering, are they recasting Riggs for Sean William Scott, or are they introducing another character?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because honestly, the whole franchise is Riggs and Murtaugh.
Yeah.
But I heard it ended on some form of cliffhanger where Riggs may potentially be moving with his wife Molly and whatnot, but it kind of leaves a window as far as writing the character out, or if fans don't care enough and just say, okay, we'll accept the new guy as the main guy, and you can't have Lethal Weapon without Riggs and Murtaugh. I'm sorry.
I agree, yeah.
So, of the shows that are being brought back, and franchise, another Westworld, which, funny thing about Westworld is, did you know that there was actually a very brief TV show after the film came out called Beyond Westworld?
I did not know that, no.
Yeah. I was stumbling upon some YouTube clips and saw one of those short-lived TV shows, and they actually did something like that already. But it's about as memorable as Aftermath, which is not memorable at all.
No.
It was called Beyond Westworld. So I guess if you ever check it out, let me know how it is.
Yeah.
So we also saw another incarnation of the Thundercats, where I think there's some people not liking the animation style for it.
I remember, wasn't there like an attempt at doing some kind of like updated Thundercats, like cool teenage version of them a couple years back? I think there was like an animated attempt that they only lasted one season before it got axed, and now it seems like they're trying to do it again, which for me, I'm just like, you guys are really testing just how big this nostalgia bug is right now.
Yeah. So, speaking of which, I guess I gotta pose the question. Well, first, we're going to start with the negative, and then we'll go with the positive afterward. What do you think is a franchise that shouldn't have been brought back, but has been?
A franchise that shouldn't have been brought back. I'm not a big fan of the real-life Roseanne Barr's politics. I'm also not a fan of the fact that my last name is Barr, so every other day I'll have, somebody that I know just be like, oh, what's the deal with your mom? Like, as a fun joke. The show seems to have some resonance with the general public, whether good or bad. I lean towards bad. But that's one that I'm kind of on the fence on. For me, really, the one that I hate the most is not even necessarily a reboot, but it's kind of like a reboot. It's the Kevin Can Wait show. which is essentially just like King of Queens, but it's called a different thing, and it's Kevin James just doing his same Kevin James thing. And they actually, I don't know if you heard about this, but in the first season, he had a wife who was played by Erin Hayes, who's a very funny comedian. But then for the second season, they kill her off and then replace her with the woman that played Kevin James's wife in King of Queens.
Yeah.
And that just general move, I was just like, that's really not classy. So for me, like, it's, you know, it's not technically a reboot, but it's just clearly so much of the show's intrigue is based on the fact that it's basically just King of Queens again. So for me, that takes the cake of the one that annoys me the most.
Yeah, I happen to agree with that. And I mean, I didn't really watch King of Queens, and I'm not really watching the new Kevin James show anyway, because I tend to steer clear of comedians that just are themselves, and I mean, unless they're charismatic enough. I mean, some like Chris Rock actually enjoy his humor more, but unfortunately his show was kind of short-lived on there.
Well, I feel the same way about Crashing on HBO, where it's just Pete Holmes is not enough for me to kind of feel invested, because it is really just him being himself, which I don't really, you know, I enjoy stand-up, but I don't need to also then see the TV show about it, you know?
Right. Kind of like the whole Seinfeld deal when he used to just do, his openings were just him doing stand-up.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld. I will make a point about Roseanne, though. As much as the show itself has always bathed itself in controversy. So if you remember back to the first run, and we'll forget about that hokey final season, that was nonsense. It was actually pretty progressive for its time, because it normalized the LGBT community, wherein we almost hardly ever saw it around in presence. They had some auxiliary characters like that, and pretty much they explored topics that were almost kind of taboo. So it was kind of like a Norman Lear type of feeling with that, but now, because I think the audience is a lot more politically divided, they're more, it's not so much a thought-provoking exercise as opposed to like, oh wait, so there's something I don't really like here, and they're showing it. So rather than just be a point of empathy, it's more like, oh, it's off-putting, so I'm not going to watch. Which, you know, it kind of, in that sense, it stayed consistent with the controversial nature of the show as it did before. Yeah. So, but, I mean, I haven't really followed the show since, I guess, the premiere. That out of curiosity, when I looked, it's like, oh, yeah, it looks like the same old, same old. Yeah.
Well, it's definitely interesting, that point with, like, you know, kind of, like, leaning into controversy. Because, yeah, I mean, like, you know, that's definitely something that can work. But it is that question of, like, all right, are you trying to be controversial because you want to have, like, a good conversation? Or are you trying to be controversial to be controversial, you know? And that's kind of, I think, the thing that'll really define whether or not Roseanne ends up becoming more widely accepted by today's viewing audience in this reboot.
Right. So as far as franchises that should be rebooted or maybe translated to another medium, what do you think some of the franchises that should be given another chance or rebooted?
For me, there are two that I kind of thought about and felt like I would really enjoy seeing. The first one, they've, you know, kind of come back, you know, for like quick beats in time, but, you know, haven't had anything really consistent for a while in either movies or television, and that's the Muppets. The Muppets, they had a season of TV on ABC, I think, back in 2014. That show ended up getting canceled after one season. And, you know, they've had a couple of movies that have come out in recent years, but I don't remember when the last one came out, which is kind of sad, because, you know, the Muppets, I grew up watching the Muppets. I think they're great characters, and I'd love to see something a little bit more consistent coming from the Muppet camp, whether that be, you know, another big movie, or whether that be another attempt at a different kind of TV show. That's a franchise that I'd love to see come back in some capacity. So that's my number one.
Well, outside of Sesame Street, I think the longest prime time, well, technically Sesame Street was never prime time, but it's still kind of weird seeing them on HBO.
Yeah.
And I think Family Guy did the appropriate joke for that, but you can just YouTube that.
There you go.
So I think I think the only sitcom, or I don't know, maybe you can correct me, was Dinosaurs, that actually used regular Muppets as a staple, and they had a few years in that. Do you remember any other animatronic or puppet sitcoms or TV shows even that concentrated on them?
Are we counting Alf?
Well, technically, Alf was in a costume. They had an actor dressed up in it, so technically it's not a puppet even. It's a person in a suit.
Then yeah, I don't I had Alf, that's it.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure. I'm looking forward to Happy Time Murders, which is the latest from, well, I think it's Jim Henson's son, and it's a Melissa McCarthy film that, it's pretty much Avenue Q, Crank Anchors, and everything in between. It's perverse, and I don't know. Have you heard of that film?
I have. I watched the first half of the trailer, and I was like, oh, alright, this is a movie. A lot of people have been describing it as like the puppet version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which, I mean, if it's that good, then I'll definitely be swayed to see it. But yeah, the trailer in and of itself, I was not invested enough in that I felt like it's a movie that I gotta make sure I see.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess with the advent of CGI, it just becomes such a novelty to just do even form of puppets. And honestly, I think it was one of the best moves that Lucasfilm did at least with the aliens. I mean, obviously there were some CGI aliens in the film, but you saw more of the practical ones, which to me, there's some things that CGI you can never just replicate. One is the lighting. I mean, it's one of the most obvious things. When you look at, for example, Peter Cushing in A New Hope versus what they had up there in Rogue One, I never saw any dramatic lighting change with them, so he kind of looked just like in the same place all the time. And meanwhile, you actually saw real shadows on Peter Cushing's face because, it was on a set and everything, rather than knowing that he was digitally created. And obviously, unless you're unless you're really technical, or just something that just observation-wise, it's just something you would pick up just, right off the way if you're that astute. Now, I don't know, do you think that sort of detail would be, do you think it would be overthinking it or too inattentive, or do you think it's a legitimate concern that CGI hasn't?
A little column A, a little column B. I think at this point CGI is at a point where I think it'd definitely, look better and could hypothetically be beneficial to incorporate. But, there's something that is very nice about kind of sticking to just your guns of puppets. Sticking to your puppet guns. I think that's good. I think that's a nice thing to have.
I mean, I guess I transition this over to another incident that I saw recently, that Hawaii Five-0, which is another reboot, that recently CGI'd Jack Lord, the original person in the show, right?
Oh.
Yeah, they CGI'd him in kind of like a final segment there as kind of a big shocker, and it's like, yeah, that doesn't look very good at all. And I was just like, jaw drop was like kind of bad, because I know they wanted a nod to the original character, but no. That's just something that should be touched, and I'm kind of curious what we're going to do for episode 9 for Carrie Fisher, to be honest. But as far as the franchises, I think that should be rebooted, and or at least maybe see another medium. I think Die Hard. I think the whole I think the whole movie thing is sailed unless they do a reboot. But I think on TV, and we kind of executed on 24, the way John McClane could solve maybe a season-long plot of terrorists trying to upend some infrastructure, and I think that could be making an interesting show. What do you think?
I mean, that's risky, man. I don't know about that one necessarily. Die Hard, I feel like, is kind of a franchise that definitely stretched itself too thin when it came to the movies. And I mean, obviously there are a lot of action movies that have seen a lot of success when going over to TV. But I feel like Die Hard, for me, that one I feel like hinges so much on Bruce Willis's performance as John McClane that I'm definitely a little bit skeptical of that one.
If they made Lethal Weapon work without Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, I mean, yeah, it helps that Damon Wayans has been rock and been there for a while. I mean, you don't think there could be another actor that could be as charismatic as Bruce Willis?
I mean, obviously you're right, Lethal Weapon, the TV show's worked, but I will say I haven't watched Lethal Weapon, the TV show, so I can't necessarily speak to how much I think that is necessarily in the spirit of it. I feel like, there's an actor that could be as charismatic, but I feel like it would have to be somebody crazy big in their own right for me to want to see their version of John McClane more than I would rather just rewatch the first movie.
So let me ask you this. Would you be interested more of a long-awaited sequel, or would you be interested in seeing a reboot?
In between those two options...
I mean, in general, not particularly towards the franchise. Do you think it could be done with a fresh... or do you think that just seeing the beloved characters on screen would be the driving force and there's no way they can be replaced?
I mean, for a movie like Die Hard, I definitely think it's really hard to replace actors like that when it, comes to Bruce Willis. And I mean, I'm still, again, like I said, skeptical about replacing folks like Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. For me, the kind of example that I think of when I think of the best kind of long-awaited sequel is Creed, because Creed was a really good way of incorporating a fresh new coat of paint on the Rocky franchise and having an actor like Michael B. Jordan, who's phenomenal. So for me, I think I do kind of lean more towards the long-awaited sequel, which, obviously it'll be a while before I feel like I want to really see another Die Hard movie, but I feel like ultimately that's what I would rather be interested in, watching something like that's coming back.
Interesting. So as far as anything that's coming up, as far as reboots are concerned, anything you're looking forward to?
No. Nothing really has tickled my fancy. I will say, and this kind of leads into the second one that I was going to talk about a little bit, one thing that I had remember being brought up at one point was this joke idea, or maybe it was serious, that Phil Lord and Chris Miller were talking about doing a 21 Jump Street movie that crosses over with Men in Black. And I think that the Men in Black franchise, obviously that is not a movie that's going to happen as far as I can tell. But I would love to see an actual...
They're going to do a spin-off. Sony's going to do it, and it's going to believe Chris Hemsworth is signed on, and it's going to be a different crew, and it's not going to be J&K, so they're not recast roles from the Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith roles.
Yeah. Which, I mean, at that point, especially with an agency that big, I would definitely be down to see just all of the other letters of the alphabet in that universe.
Yeah. Well, as far as the concept goes, and this was kind of a trick thing that I did, between sequels and reboots, I think one of the most interesting takes on it was Cobra Kai, which is the quote-unquote now sequel. I guess you can almost call it Karate Kid Part 4, even though they're just far away as kids as possible, of which, you know, we got those two actors, you know, kind of shining their light to their roles one more time, and it kind of focuses more, it de-emphasizes the Daniel character, which, you know, we see what he's all about, and we actually have Johnny, you know, as the main focus, and it humanizes him because, I mean, it's a kind of exposition that was interesting, and not like the reboots where those horror franchises like Halloween and Friday the 13th, and I mean, there's no reason why I should know and care about why Michael Myers became Michael Myers or why Jason became Jason, because the mystery was the appeal. But for people that are fleshed out characters, I think it's a refreshing take, because, you know, it's the focus, shifting focus. Provides a fresh perspective. It, you know, and like a new coat of paint, it's a pleasant surprise. There was one other show that came to mind. I think it'll come back to me. Bill and Ted.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The third movie could be interesting in the way that. Okay, apparently it's going to incorporate their kids. Sadly, of course, we're going to be without George Carlin, who played Rufus, and who's the mentor character. And, I mean, they're ready to do 30 years later, so my biggest question is going to the third movie is, are they going to still talk like they're 12?
That is, honestly, I'm here for it. I'm here to see a full-on adult grown man Keanu Reeves with his big beard still talking like a burnout. Like, I'm here for it. That one, I'll be honest, that franchise, I'm okay with seeing that come back. Again, just because of Keanu Reeves.
Thank you for joining us for our first show. You can catch us on Twitter, and you can catch our work on monkeysfightingrobots.com. And you can also check the show out on social media and check us out on Twitter. All right, well, this has been Tom.
Then this has been John. Have a good one, guys.